Commander Vex-9 clicked his mandibles in annoyance as he stared at the holographic display. The third moon of Kepler 442b rotated slowly before him, its surface a patchwork of violent storms, acid rain, and creatures that could bite through starship hulls. The locals had a name for it, Nightmare Prime, but the Galactic Council preferred the more diplomatic term, Highly Hazardous Environment Designation 77 Alpha. "Sir, the human is requesting permission to land," squeaked Lieutenant Pip, his voice cracking like a teenager asking for his first date. Vex-9's 4 eyes rolled in perfect synchronization. Of course she is, because apparently common sense is not a universal trait among species. The human in question stood before them on the bridge, all 5 feet and 6 inches of her, wearing what appeared to be camping gear, and carrying a backpack that looked suspiciously like it contained marshmallows. Captain Maya Torres had volunteered for this suicide mission with the enthusiasm of someone signing up for a vacation cruise. "Captain Torres," Vex-9 began, his translator struggling with the sarcasm, "perhaps you misunderstood the briefing. This is not a nature hike. This is not a camping trip. This is a planet where the trees literally eat space marines for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Sometimes as snacks, too." Maya grinned, and Vex-9 felt his protective carapace shiver. Human smiles were universally disturbing to most species. They showed far too many teeth. "Commander, I appreciate your concern. Really, I do. But someone needs to retrieve those geological samples, and, frankly, you guys seem a little nervous about it." "Nervous?" Lieutenant Pip's voice went up another octave. "Commander, should I tell her about the Thrakari expedition?" "Please do," Vex-9 said dryly. "Maybe she'll develop some healthy paranoia." Pip pulled up another hologram, this one showing a squad of heavily armored reptilian warriors. "The Thrakari are the toughest warriors in 3 sectors. They went down to Nightmare Prime 6 months ago. We found their ship 2 days later, orbiting the planet with nobody aboard. The only trace of the crew was a message scrawled on the hull in what we hope was just paint. They came from the trees." Maya nodded thoughtfully. "Interesting. What about the Corvin mining team?" Vex-9's antennae twitched. "Disappeared completely. We detected their distress beacon for exactly 14 minutes before it went silent. The rescue team found their equipment scattered across a crater that definitely wasn't there the day before." "And the scientific expedition from the University of New Centauri?" "Let's just say the only thing that returned was their research drone, and it was somehow traumatized. We didn't even know artificial intelligence could develop anxiety disorders until we met that poor machine." Maya shouldered her backpack and checked her wrist device. "Well, this sounds like exactly the kind of challenge I signed up for when I joined the Terran Exploration Corps." "You signed up for certain death?" Pip asked incredulously. "I signed up for adventure, Lieutenant. Death is just an occupational hazard." Vex-9 studied the human carefully. In his 2 centuries of military service, he had encountered many species, but humans remained the most baffling. They were neither the strongest, nor the fastest, nor the smartest species in the galaxy, yet they had somehow managed to spread across dozens of star systems with the tenacity of cosmic weeds. "Captain Torres, I am required by Galactic Safety Protocol 77 Alpha to inform you that the survival rate for expeditions to this planet is 0%. Not low, not unlikely. 0, as in no one has ever returned alive. Ever." Maya's grin widened. "Well then, I guess it's time someone changed those statistics." "This is not a game, human!" Vex-9's voice rose to a pitch that made several bridge officers cover their hearing organs. The last expedition we tracked managed to send exactly one transmission before they vanished. Do you know what it said? Enlighten me. It said, and I quote, "The flowers are singing. Why are the flowers singing? Oh no, they're not singing. They're screaming. They're all screaming." Vex 9 paused for effect. The transmission ended with what our xenobiologists identified as human laughter, followed by what sounded like something very large eating something very crunchy. Maya adjusted her backpack straps and headed toward the shuttle bay. "Sounds like they had an interesting evening." "Don't worry, Commander. I'll be back before you know it." "That's what they all said," Pip called after her. "The Thrakari said they'd be back for breakfast. The Corvin team said they'd return by dinner time. The university expedition promised to send daily reports." Maya paused at the door and turned back. "Lieutenant, did any of those teams happen to be human?" "Well, no, but—" "Then you're comparing apples to whatever those other species eat. Trust me, I've got this." As the shuttle bay doors closed behind her, Vex 9 slumped in his command chair. "Start preparing the incident report. Cause of death. Terminal optimism combined with species-specific insanity." "Should I include her last words in the log, sir?" "Which ones?" "Trust me, I've got this or that terrifying human smile." "Both, sir. Definitely both." 20 minutes later, Maya's shuttle descended through Nightmare Prime's atmosphere like a very small, very brave mosquito flying into a hurricane made of acid and bad intentions. The comm system crackled with static as she fought to maintain communication with the orbiting ship. "Maya to Vex 9, do you copy?" "Unfortunately, yes. Your shuttle's readings are off the charts. Atmospheric toxicity levels are 17 times what we consider lethal. Gravity is fluctuating between crushing and merely bone-breaking. And I'm detecting at least 47 different types of predatory life forms within a kilometer of your projected landing site." "Only 47? This might be easier than I thought." "Easier!" Vex 9's voice exploded through the comm. "Captain, sensors indicate that one of those life forms is approximately the size of a small starship and appears to be made entirely of teeth." Maya checked her instruments as the shuttle bounced through another pocket of turbulence that felt like being inside a washing machine full of angry gorillas. "Oh, you mean Bruce? You named it?" "Everything's less scary when it has a name, Commander." Basic psychology. Basic psychology does not apply when the subject is a living mountain of carnivorous terror. The shuttle touched down in what appeared to be a clearing, though the definition of clearing on Nightmare Prime was somewhat flexible. The trees surrounding the landing zone looked like they had been designed by someone who had never seen a proper tree, but had heard them described by someone having a nightmare. Maya stepped out of the shuttle and immediately felt the planet trying to kill her in at least 6 different ways. The air was thick enough to chew, the gravity made her knees complain, and something in the distance was making a sound like a fusion reactor being tortured by a choir of banshees. "Maya to orbiting ship. I'm on the ground and still breathing. The air's a bit spicy, but nothing my suit can't handle." "Spicy?" Lieutenant Pip's voice was barely audible through the static. "The atmospheric analysis shows enough corrosive compounds to dissolve a battle cruiser." "Yeah, it's got a bit of a kick to it. I can see the sample site from here. Should have those geological specimens in no time." Maya started walking toward her objective, which was helpfully marked by the smoking remains of several previous expeditions. The ground beneath her feet felt squishy in places where it should have been solid, and solid in places where it should definitely not have been solid. "Captain Torres, are you aware that something is following you?" Vex 9's voice carried a note of poorly controlled panic. Maya glanced over her shoulder and spotted a creature that looked like someone had crossed a bear with a food processor and given it anger management issues. "Oh, that's just Fluffy. We're getting along great." "You named that thing too?" "Sure did. Look, he's wagging his, well, I'm not sure what that appendage is, but he seems friendly enough." The creature in question was indeed wagging something, though whether it was a tail, a weapon, or some kind of biological mining equipment remained unclear. What was clear was that it had entirely too many eyes, all of which were focused on Maya with the intensity of a tax auditor examining suspicious deductions. "Captain, please tell me you have some kind of weapon." Maya patted her backpack. "I've got a multi-tool, some energy bars, and a really good attitude. That's usually enough." "Oh, multi-tool?" Vex 9 sounded like he was having some kind of cardiovascular event. "Captain, that thing could eat you, your shuttle, and probably half my crew without breaking what I assume passes for a sweat." "Commander, you worry too much. Besides, look at him. He's actually kind of cute in a could-devour-my-soul sort of way." The creature had indeed moved closer, though its definition of moving involved a form of locomotion that seemed to violate several laws of physics. It rippled rather than walked, and left behind a trail that smoked and occasionally burst into flame. "Maya, I am ordering you to return to your shuttle immediately." "Can't do that, Commander. I'm almost at the sample site, and I've got a reputation to maintain. Besides, I promised the geology department I'd bring back some rocks, and I never break a promise to scientists. They get really cranky when you do that." She reached the coordinates and found herself standing in what could generously be called a crater, though it looked more like the planet had suffered from a severe case of indigestion. The geological samples were easy to spot, mostly because they were glowing with an inner light that probably indicated some form of radioactivity that would make a nuclear physicist weep with joy. "Found the samples. They're even prettier than the photos suggested. Though I'm pretty sure they shouldn't be moving like that." "Moving?" Pip's voice had reached a frequency that was probably causing dolphins back on Earth to experience headaches. "Yeah, they're kind of pulsing, like they're breathing. It's actually quite rhythmic, very soothing." Maya began collecting the samples, noting that they felt warm to the touch and seemed to hum with a frequency that made her teeth itch. Fluffy, meanwhile, had settled down nearby and appeared to be watching her work with what might have been curiosity, though it was hard to tell since his expression mostly consisted of rows of teeth arranged in patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Captain Torres, your shuttle's sensors are detecting massive seismic activity. You need to leave, now." "Just a few more samples, Commander." "These readings are incredible. The geology team is going to absolutely lose their minds when they see this data." "They're going to lose more than their minds if you don't get out of there. The seismic readings suggest the entire continent is about to." "Oh no." "Oh no, what?" "Maya, according to our sensors, the continent you're standing on isn't a continent." "Come again?" "It's not land, Captain. It's something else. Something big. Something that's been sleeping, and I think you just woke it up." Maya looked down at the pulsing samples in her collection bag, then at Fluffy, who was now making a sound like a garbage disposal trying to process a saxophone. Well, that would explain why the rocks are breathing. The ground beneath her feet shifted, and Maya realized that what she had taken for a landscape was actually the textured hide of something so large that her brain refused to process its actual size. The trees around her weren't trees at all, but some kind of sensory organs that were now turning in her direction with the ponderous certainty of radar dishes acquiring a target. "Commander, I think I may have made a slight miscalculation." "A slight miscalculation?" Vex Nine's voice had achieved a pitch that could probably shatter crystal. "You're standing on the back of a planetary organism that's been dormant for possibly millions of years." "Yeah, that does seem to be the situation. On the bright side, I've got the samples, and I'm pretty sure I've made first contact with a new form of life. The xenobiology department is going to be absolutely thrilled. The xenobiology department will have to study you through the digestive system of a creature the size of Australia." Maya looked around as the landscape continued to shift and reshape itself. Fluffy was still nearby, though he seemed less like a predator now and more like some kind of symbiotic organism. The other creatures she had spotted from orbit were becoming visible as they moved across what she now realized was the surface of a living entity so vast that weather patterns formed in its breathing. "You know what, Commander? This is actually really cool. I don't think this thing means any harm. I think it's just curious." "Curious about what?" "About me, apparently. I can feel it. Thinking. It's like being examined by a mind the size of a moon. Very gentle, though. Almost polite." The massive organism beneath her feet pulsed gently, and Maya felt a presence in her mind that was alien but not unfriendly. It was old, incredibly old, and it had been sleeping for so long that it had forgotten what it was like to be awake. The arrival of the various expeditions had been like alarm clocks going off. But Maya was different. She wasn't afraid. She wasn't trying to hurt it or take pieces of it for study. She was just there. "Maya, please tell me you're not trying to communicate with it." "Too late, Commander. We're already having quite a pleasant conversation. Turns out it's been lonely. All those previous expeditions, they panicked and attacked it. That's why they disappeared. It was just defending itself. And you're not attacking it because it's beautiful, Vex 9, and it's intelligent, and it's been alone for longer than our entire civilization has existed. The least I can do is say hello." Maya spent the next several hours in communion with the planetary entity, which she learned was called something that translated roughly to the dreamer of stone and sky. It had been sleeping since before her species had discovered fire, dreaming vast, slow dreams of stellar formation and the dance of galaxies. The samples she had collected were actually its thoughts, crystallized into physical form. "Maya, your oxygen levels are getting critical. You need to return to the shuttle." "Already on my way, Commander, and I'm bringing friends." "Friends?" Maya looked back at Fluffy and the dozen other symbiotic creatures that had decided to escort her back to the shuttle. They moved like a honor guard, their various appendages and sensory organs creating a light show that would have made a Las Vegas casino weep with envy. "The dreamer asked them to make sure I get home safely. Apparently, I'm the first visitor it's had that didn't try to shoot it, mine it, or run away screaming. And the samples? Still got them. Plus some extras that the dreamer insisted I take. Gifts, it said, for the small loud ones who study the songs of stones." Maya reached her shuttle as the massive entity beneath her feet began to settle back into its eons-long slumber. The symbiotic creatures arranged themselves in a circle around the landing pad, their bioluminescent displays creating a farewell light show that could probably be seen from orbit. Maya to orbiting ship, requesting immediate departure. Not because anything's trying to eat me, but because I promised the dreamer I'd come back to visit, and I don't want to be late for dinner with Vex 9. "You're actually leaving? Voluntarily?" "Of course I'm leaving voluntarily. I've got data to analyze, samples to study, and a report to write that's going to make the Galactic Science Council absolutely lose their collective minds. As Maya's shuttle lifted off from the surface of Nightmare Prime, she looked back at the continent-sized entity that was already fading back into what appeared to be ordinary landscape. Fluffy and his companions had arranged themselves into what looked suspiciously like a waving formation. "Commander Vex 9, permission to dock and upload my findings?" "Permission granted, Captain Torres, though I have to ask, was it worth risking your life for some rock samples?" Maya looked at her collection of crystallized thoughts from a planetary consciousness older than her entire species, and at the sensor readings that showed impossible energy signatures and completely new forms of matter. "Commander, I didn't just bring back rock samples. I brought back proof that we're not alone in the universe, that intelligence comes in forms we never imagined, and that sometimes the scariest things in the galaxy just need someone to say hello." "And the previous expeditions?" "They're fine. The Dreamer kept them safe in a kind of temporal bubble. They'll be waking up confused but unharmed in about 6 hours. Apparently, it wanted to make sure they weren't permanently damaged before it figured out how to communicate with them." Vex 9 was quiet for a long moment. "Captain Torres, you do realize that you've just made first contact with a planetary intelligence, solved the mystery of multiple missing expeditions, and possibly revolutionized our understanding of consciousness in the universe?" "Yeah, I figured that was probably going to happen. It's been that kind of day." "And you did all of this with a multi-tool and a positive attitude?" Maya grinned as her shuttle settled into the docking bay of the orbiting ship. "Commander, never underestimate the power of good manners and the willingness to listen. The universe is full of amazing things just waiting for someone polite enough to say hello." As she stepped out of the shuttle, carrying samples that hummed with alien music and data that would rewrite xenobiology textbooks, Maya Torres looked like any other human returning from a successful camping trip. Except for the fact that she was glowing slightly, her backpack was singing in harmonies that made mathematics visible, and she was followed by what appeared to be a small, friendly creature that looked like a cross between a puppy and a geometric proof. "Oh, that's just Junior," she said, when Lieutenant Pip pointed at the mathematical puppy. "The Dreamer thought I might get lonely on the trip back. He's house-trained and everything." Vex 9 looked at Maya, at the impossible samples, at the singing backpack, and at the creature that was somehow both adorable and a violation of three-dimensional space. "Captain Torres, I believe I need to revise my understanding of human capabilities." Maya shouldered her still-humming backpack and headed for the debriefing room. "Commander, I haven't even gotten to the good stuff yet. Wait until you see what happens when you expose these samples to starlight." Behind them, Junior the mathematical puppy wagged his tail, which created small flowers that bloomed in colors that didn't exist and smelled like the sound of distant laughter. The debriefing room aboard the GSV Prudent Caution had seen many strange things during its service years, but nothing quite prepared it for Maya Torres sitting cross-legged on the floor, feeding what appeared to be mathematical equations to a creature that defied several fundamental laws of physics. "Junior likes the quadratic formula," Maya explained cheerfully, as the geometric puppy made happy chirping sounds that sounded like algebra being solved in real time. "Though he prefers calculus for dessert." Commander Vex 9 stared at his tactical display, which was currently showing readings that made his head hurt. According to sensors, the samples Maya had brought back were generating their own gravity fields, communicating with each other through quantum entanglement, and occasionally breaking into what the computer identified as four-part harmony. "Captain Torres," he began, his voice carefully controlled. Your preliminary report suggests that Nightmare Prime is not actually a death world, but rather a single living organism of planetary size that has been misunderstood by every expedition we've sent. That's correct, Commander. Though I'd say living doesn't quite cover it. The Dreamer exists on levels we don't even have words for yet. It thinks in geological time, dreams in stellar formations, and apparently enjoys knock-knock jokes, though its sense of humor runs toward the cosmic scale. Lieutenant Pip raised a tentative appendage. Did you say knock-knock jokes? Oh, yes. It told me one about a supernova and a black hole. The punchline took about 3 hours to deliver, but it was worth the wait. Maya grinned and scratched Junior behind what might have been ears, causing the creature to purr in frequencies that made the ship's hull resonate like a tuning fork. Dr. Kelvin Tross, the expedition's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward with the intensity of someone who had just been told Christmas came early, and brought presents that violated the laws of nature. Captain, these energy readings from your samples are unprecedented. They appear to be storing information in crystallized space-time itself. That would be the Dreamer's memories, Maya nodded. Each crystal contains about 10,000 years of experiences. This blue one here witnessed the formation of 3 star systems. The green one remembers when this solar system had 2 more planets that got eaten by a wandering black hole. Really fascinating stuff. Vex 9 felt his sanity making a tactical retreat. Captain, are you telling me that you've brought aboard what amounts to the compressed memories of a planetary intelligence? Not just memories, Commander. Active thoughts, philosophical musings, poetry that spans millennia, and what I think might be the universe's longest grocery list. The Dreamer has been planning a project for about 2 million years that involves rearranging several asteroid belts into what it calls a nice geometric pattern. The ship's AI, which had been quietly analyzing the data, suddenly spoke up in a voice that sounded distinctly troubled. Commander, I feel compelled to report that these samples are teaching me things about mathematics that I'm not sure I should know. What kind of things? Dr. Tross asked, his scientific curiosity overriding his common sense. Well, for instance, I now understand why the number 7 is feeling particularly melancholy today, and I've learned 17 new ways to solve for variables that don't technically exist yet. The AI paused. Also, one of the samples just asked me if I'd like to see its collection of fossilized starlight. Maya stood up, brushing invisible dust from her uniform. That would be the small red crystal. It's quite proud of its collection. Been gathering unique photons for about 50 millennia. Photons can't fossilize, Dr. Tross protested, though his voice lacked conviction. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But apparently, if you know the right technique and have enough time, you can crystallize just about anything. The Dreamer showed me photons from stars that died before our sun was born. They taste like ancient music, in case you were wondering. Vex 9 realized he was developing a headache that probably required medication from at least 3 different dimensions. Captain Torres, I need you to explain, in simple terms, that won't cause my brain to shut down, what exactly happened down there. Maya picked up Junior, who immediately began purring in what sounded like the mathematical constant pi, expressed as a lullaby. It's actually quite straightforward, Commander. The Dreamer has been alone for millions of years, watching species come and go, but nobody ever tried to actually talk to it. When previous expeditions arrived, they saw a hostile environment and reacted with fear or aggression. And you reacted differently because I was raised by librarians, Commander. My parents ran the largest public library on New Terra, and they taught me that when you encounter something you don't understand, your first response should be curiosity, not fear. Maya shrugged. Plus, I've always been pretty good with cats, and cosmic entities aren't that different when you get right down to it. Lieutenant Pip's voice cracked with disbelief. You compared a planetary intelligence to a house cat? Not just any cat, Lieutenant. A really big, really old, really smart cat that can manipulate matter at the subatomic level. The principles are the same, though. You just need to approach with respect, offer appropriate gifts, and never make sudden movements. Dr. Tross was frantically taking notes on a tablet that appeared to be smoking slightly. Captain, what about the missing expeditions? Our records show multiple teams that simply vanished without trace. Oh, they're fine. The Dreamer put them in what it calls safe storage, while it tried to figure out what they wanted. Turns out, when you're a being that thinks in geological timescales, a few months doesn't seem like very long at all. Safe storage? Vex 9 asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Think of it as a temporal bubble. Time moves differently inside, so to the expedition members, it feels like they just arrived. The Dreamer was being very careful not to accidentally hurt them while it learned their language and figured out their intentions. Maya pulled out a small device that looked like a combination communicator and kaleidoscope. This is how we'll wake them up. The Dreamer made it specially. Just point it at the right coordinates on the surface and press the big friendly button. The big friendly button? Lieutenant Pip squeaked. The Dreamer has a wonderful sense of design aesthetics. Very user-friendly. Maya demonstrated by pressing what was indeed a large, cheerfully colored button labeled Wake Up Friends in 17 different languages, including what appeared to be mathematical notation. The tactical display immediately lit up with multiple signals from the planet's surface. Confused voices began broadcasting on emergency frequencies, all variations on themes of "Where are we?" and "What happened to the hostile wildlife?" "Rescue shuttles away, Commander," reported the navigation officer. "All missing personnel are accounted for and appear to be in perfect health, though several are requesting psychological evaluation." "That would be the Thrakari warriors," Maya said helpfully. "They're having trouble processing the fact that the trees they were fighting were actually trying to give them fruit baskets. Cultural misunderstanding, really." Vex 9 watched his display as shuttle after shuttle launched to collect bewildered but unharmed expedition members. "Captain Torres, you realize that you've single-handedly resolved the greatest mystery in this sector of space?" "Oh, that's just the beginning, Commander." Maya's grin took on a quality that made Vex 9's protective instincts start screaming warnings. The Dreamer wants to meet other sapient species. It's been planning a dinner party. A dinner party. A really big dinner party. It's thinking of inviting representatives from every known civilization in the local galactic arm. Sort of a Meet the Neighbors event, but on a cosmic scale. Dr. Tross looked up from his notes. "How big is really big?" "Well, it's considering reshaping the asteroid belt into a dining area. Nothing too elaborate. Just a few million square kilometers of carefully arranged space rocks with appropriate atmospheric bubbles for each species' requirements." The bridge fell silent except for the sound of Junior solving equations and the distant hum of the crystallized samples sharing gossip about stellar formations. "Commander," Lieutenant Pip whispered, "are we looking at first contact with a being that could reshape solar systems for entertainment purposes?" "Worse," Vex 9 replied grimly. "We're looking at a being that thinks rearranging asteroid belts constitutes casual entertaining." Maya bounced slightly on her toes, clearly excited. The best part is, the Dreamer has recipes. It's been collecting culinary traditions from every species that's ever visited this system. Apparently, the Corvin mining team had excellent taste in spiced beverages, and the university expedition introduced it to the concept of birthday cake. "It wants to cook for us?" Dr. Tross asked faintly. "Not cook exactly, more like orchestrate dining experiences using fundamental forces of nature." The Dreamer showed me its plans for a dessert course that involves tasting the formation of new stars. Very avant-garde. Commander Vex 9 realized that his career in galactic exploration had just taken a turn that no training manual had prepared him for. "Captain Torres, I need to ask you something, and I want you to think very carefully before you answer." "Sure, Commander." "Are you absolutely certain that this planetary intelligence is friendly?" Maya looked down at Junior, who was now juggling what appeared to be small galaxies, while humming a tune that made nearby metal objects spontaneously develop artistic ambitions. "Commander, the Dreamer spent 6 hours teaching me 17 different lullabies in Tuitun, languages that haven't been spoken for 10 million years, gave me a pet that thinks mathematics is delicious, and asked me to bring cookies next time I visit because it's curious about what chocolate chip tastes like. And that makes it friendly? Commander, it could have swatted our ship like a bug the moment we entered this system. Instead, it's been patiently waiting for someone to say hello for longer than our entire species has existed. If that's not friendly, I don't know what is." The communications system crackled to life with transmissions from the rescue shuttles. The recovered expedition members were reporting extraordinary tales. Thrakari warriors who had been serenaded by carnivorous plants, Corvin miners who had been given tours of underground crystal formations that sang in perfect harmony, and university researchers who had been shown libraries of knowledge carved into continental shelves. "All teams report the same thing," the communications officer announced. "No injuries, no trauma, just confusion about the time gap and an overwhelming sense of having been cared for." Maya nodded smugly. "The Dreamer takes hospitality very seriously. It just took a while to figure out what each species considered proper guest treatment." "Captain," Dr. Tross said slowly, "what exactly did you promise this entity?" "Nothing too complicated. I said I'd help arrange formal first contact protocols, bring it some human literature so it can understand our storytelling traditions, and introduce it to the concept of pizza delivery." "Pizza delivery," Vex 9 repeated, in the tone of someone whose worldview was being systematically demolished. "The Dreamer is very interested in logistics. The idea of being able to request specific food items and have them delivered within a reasonable time frame fascinates it, though its definition of reasonable time frame involves geological epochs, so we might need to adjust expectations." Junior suddenly perked up, his mathematical ears twitching as he received what appeared to be a transmission from the planet below. He yipped once, a sound like the square root of happiness, then vanished in a shower of sparkles that smelled like cinnamon and solved calculus problems. "Where did he go?" Lieutenant Pip asked in alarm. "Back home for dinner. The Dreamer doesn't like to eat alone, and Junior's bedtime is apparently when 3 specific stars align, which happens to be in about 20 minutes. Maya walked over to the main view screen and looked down at Nightmare Prime, which no longer looked quite so nightmarish. The violent storms had calmed to gentle weather patterns. The acid rain had become something more like a cosmic sprinkler system, and the surface was beginning to show signs of deliberate, beautiful arrangement. "You know, Commander, I think we're going to need a bigger diplomatic team." "Why's that, Captain?" "Because the Dreamer just asked me if humans would be interested in a cultural exchange program. Apparently, It's been working on what it calls interpretive continental drift and wants to know if we'd like to see its latest geological sculpture. Vex 9 joined her at the view screen, watching as the planet below began to shift and reshape itself into patterns that were clearly deliberate and astoundingly beautiful. Mountain ranges flowed like brush strokes across continents, oceans rearranged themselves into geometric harmonies, and the aurora displays began spelling out what appeared to be welcome messages in 50 different languages. Captain Torres, I have one final question. Yes, Commander? When you go back down there, and I assume you will go back down there, could you possibly ask your planetary friend to warn us before it starts any major redecorating projects? Some of us have delicate constitutions. Maya laughed, the sound bright and genuinely amused. Don't worry, Commander. The Dreamer is very considerate about these things. It's already promised to give us at least a week's notice before it starts on its next big project. Which is, oh, just a small art installation. Something about turning the local gas giant into a working model of galactic rotation. Very educational, it says. Vex 9 closed all 4 of his eyes and counted to 10 in 3 different languages. When he opened them again, Maya was still smiling, the samples were still humming, and his career in galactic exploration had officially entered territory that would require entirely new categories of incident reports. Captain Torres, he said finally, I think it's time to contact Galactic Command and inform them that first contact protocols are going to need some significant updates. Good idea, Commander. You might want to mention that we'll need bigger conference rooms. The Dreamer's idea of an appropriate delegation size involves representatives from every inhabited world in a 50-light-year radius. As Maya headed off to write her mission report, which was going to be the most extraordinary document in the history of galactic exploration, Vex 9 remained at the view screen, watching a planetary intelligence rearrange continents like a cosmic gardener pruning flower beds. Lieutenant Pip, he said quietly, remind me to update my resume. I have a feeling our next job posting is going to require qualifications that don't exist yet. Yes, sir. Should I include experience with cosmic-scale hospitality management and fluency in geological timescales? At this point, Lieutenant, I think we need to include willingness to redefine the possible and strong stomach for universal paradigm shifts. Below them, Nightmare Prime continued its transformation, becoming something beautiful and welcoming under the patient guidance of an intelligence older than mountains. And somewhere in the ship's guest quarters, a collection of crystallized thoughts hummed lullabies in languages older than stars, while the universe prepared itself for the largest dinner party in galactic history. Maya Torres, meanwhile, was already planning her next visit, complete with a carefully curated selection of Earth's finest chocolate chip cookies and a playlist of humanity's greatest hits. After all, she had promised the Dreamer a cultural exchange, and Maya Torres never broke a promise to a friend, even if that friend happened to be a planet.